The world is going through changes. Changes happening at a speed that we have never seen before. This is leading to disruption, chaos, panic, fear, hysteria, and a turbulent economy and marketplace. How do you protect your wealth in a turbulent world? How do you invest for cash flow and alternative assets to escape the rat race in times of uncertainty? How do you decentralize yourself, your family, your community, your business, and your investments to become sovereign and escape the matrix? If you are looking for strategies, tactics, and techniques to escape the rat race and matrix, you are in the right place. My name is MC Lobsher, and this is Cashflow Ninja. This is Cashflow Ninja. I'm MC Lobsher. Thank you so much for joining me for another episode in spending your most valuable resource, your time, once again with me on the show. Everything Cashflow Ninja is at cashflowninja.com. That's cashflowninja.com. There's over 1,000 podcasts. We have 4 books. There are reports and webinars and much, much more, all at cashflowninja.com. And don't forget to subscribe to the #1 newsletter in the alternative wealth strategy and alternative asset investing space, the Wealth Dojo. You can subscribe to the Wealth Dojo by going to cashflowninja.com/subscribe. I've got a fantastic show for you today. I'm joined by Don Wenner from DLP Capital. Don, it's great to see you.
Awesome. Pleasure to be here with you.
Yeah, I've been looking forward to our conversation. We had a great time the last time you were on the show. For our listeners and viewers, you could go to cashflowninja.com and just put in Don Wenner. We had some great conversations in the past already. We're going to talk a lot about legacy today, and that's something that is very important to a lot of our listeners and viewers. So what can you share around the concept of legacy, and where should you start when thinking about one's legacy?
Yeah, thank you. It's a big question, right? And it's one I think not enough of us spend enough of our time thinking about, right? It gets so easy to get caught up in the day-to-day priorities, or even some of us, maybe the priorities we set for this year, to take a step back and really define, what we want our legacy to be, is a big question. And so 2 places I recommend people to start with is, number 1 is to define or answer for yourself the question of, what do you want to be remembered for? And it's kind of that whole concept you may have heard of, living for your eulogy instead of your resume. And that idea that if people were coming around celebrating you after you left this earth, what would you be hoping that they're saying about you, right? What are people going to be talking about? What are they going to be saying at your celebration? That's the first big question that I encourage people to think about answering. And then the second question, that's maybe not as far out to really think about, is what we call, perfect life outcomes or perfect life metrics. And the frame of this is, if you and I were, sitting on a park bench or sitting out, overlooking the mountains, having a glass of wine, 30 years from now, and I said to you, how did the last 30 years of your life go? What will have happened for you to be able to answer that question as, the last 30 years of my life were perfect, right? What will have happened? What will have looked like for your life to end up perfectly, or to be exactly where you'd want it to be? Call it 30 years out. Depending on what age you are listening to this, maybe you want to frame that up as 10 years out or 20 years out or 30 years out. But I like the framework of 30 years out. What would my life look like? Where will I be? What will have happened? It's a great place to start.
And then one of the things that you talk about too, when it comes to legacy and building a legacy for your family, because I think that's the big picture, right? It starts with us, yes. And I often talk about you want to leave, but also live a legacy, like show them why you're still alive, right? Because you want to pass that on to your family and eventually create this family legacy. You talk about different types of capital that compromises a family's legacy. Can you just share a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I think there's, a lot of people when they think about, capital, or take a step back, when people think about, legacy, I think the most common place people think is leaving, financial resources, money, right? Is what most people think about in terms of what they're going to leave to their family. And when we just talk about investing or capital, most people's mind goes to our financial capital, and that certainly is a very, very important form of capital. It's an important part of legacy to many, but that's just one form of capital. And there's a number of experts out there who frame up the different forms of capital in some different ways. But you'll find if you go kind of do research on this five forms of capital or six forms of capital, you'll see people frame it up in slightly different ways. But the way I frame it up is into five forms of capital, and these are the five. And when you think about it in terms of legacy, these are the things that we can leave within our family, as you were alluding to, while we're here, and things we'll have left when we're not here. So one is human capital. So that's our family, right? That's the physical, emotional, well-being in simple terms of our family. That's a part of our legacy. That's a form of capital. Second is intellectual capital. So that's the knowledge that we leave behind. That's the knowledge our family has, and that we get to some of that's the knowledge of family experiences and what we learn together, what we learn from each other. But it's also could be helping kids, grandkids, get an education, helping them go to college, things like that is part of our legacy, the knowledge within our family. Third is social, and that's the relationships with each other in our family. That's our relationships in the broader community, or the communities we're a part of, or the types of people or organizations or causes we want to make a difference on, the people involved in that. Fourth is spiritual, and as a believer, to me, that's the most important one, right? I want to make sure that that my children, my wife, my nephews, my nieces, all have a relationship with Christ, and I want to be able to, see them all in heaven, and so making sure that I'm not afraid or hesitant to help do everything I can to help them build a strong relationship with the Lord. And then finally is financial, and that one's one we're all the most familiar with, right? And put most of our focus around.
It's interesting that when you look at family office structures and just families within family offices, if you look at these different types of capital too, the easiest to control and pass down is the financial part of it.
Right.
It's the simplest one. You have the correct or you have the best team of advisors around you that create these tax, legal, and insurance structures, and the rest takes care of itself. But it's the intangibles, right? Not the tangibles. That's the hardest.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well said. And that's why, I think at the end of the day, why people put the least focus on this other areas, because it's much harder. It's much messier, right? It's much more difficult than for those of us who've been blessed to be, successful in our careers, right? And create, some income and some wealth, right? That's the easier part. Not saying it's easy for many people. I still think if we talk about financial, put too much focus on some of the wrong things, like too much focus around investment allocation, not enough focus around tax and estate planning and protection, right, as an example. But yeah, that's the easier side to focus on than the soft stuff, right?
It's interesting. I always say when people ask what are some of the secrets of the wealthiest families, and my response is always they do the complete opposite of everything that the average person does, right? So to your
Yeah.
point there, the average person would be like, oh, the money, the financial, that's where all the focus is. Where the ultra wealthy families, these family office style families, they'll focus on the other four more than the financial, because that's the part that's the easiest in this. You also talk about different keys of to building just an extraordinary like family legacy and life. Can you share more about that?
Yeah. So to kind of your note, you were just saying about what are the secrets of highly successful families. when you look at what are the keys to success as an individual, and so my belief is that what we all want is success and significance, or success with significance. Success is about achieving our goals in our life, and significance about helping other people and being a part of something bigger than yourself. That's what life is really about, whether people realize it or not. It's what they all want, right? They want to achieve their goals. They want to achieve success in whatever way they measure that, and they want to help other people. That's what gives us significance in our lives. So success and significance is really what everybody's looking for, and it's easy for us to think about it, or we tend to think about ourselves when you hear something like that. But when we look at our families and we think about our children, and the rest of our family, and we think about, all right, what do we want for our children? We want them to certainly be successful, and certainly in the financial realm, that's part of it. But we want them to have significance, meaning, purpose in their life, above and beyond just making money or just achieving their next goal. So what I found is that the keys to living a life of success are six things. And if you could have every member of your family living this, believing this, behaving this way, you'd have an extraordinary family. And frankly, if most of our family members did, believed in or chose to commit to four of these six commitments, you'd have an incredible family. And that's the cool thing with these six keys per se, is that they're just commitments. They're choices. They're decisions of how we want to live our lives. And the first one, and kind of the foundation of it all, is intentionality, and living your life by design instead of by accident, right? Instead of living your life and making a decision based upon what happens to you, choosing how you spend your time, choosing intentionally what you focus on. And that's the big picture stuff, like what do we do for a living, and where in the country do we live, and things like that. And that's the small stuff to how do we spend our time each day, and who do we spend it with, and being very intentional about that. And intentionality is as much about what we choose to do as much as what we choose not to do. So that's number one. Number two is having clear purpose, or you could call that, getting clear on what you're called to do, but having clear purpose in our lives. That, again, on the big picture standpoint, what am I here on this earth to do? I know I've been called to transform lives through the building of thriving communities. That's my calling. That's my purpose. I'm clear on it. But also, purpose applies to having purpose to everything we do, right? What's the goal of the next meeting you go into? What's the purpose behind it? What's the outcome you want to have from that, right? Knowing that before you go in, right? If I go in a podcast like this and my goal is to raise capital, that's a different approach I'm going to take to this. And my goal is to share any knowledge that I've been blessed with others, and hope that it makes some impact in our lives, right? It's a different perspective to how I would approach this conversation, this time we spend together, right? Number three is having clear goals, right? Goals are important. Clear goals, long term, like the perfect life outcomes 30 years from now, to what we call our 1 year, living fully dashboard for this year, 90-day rocks. Number four is grit. You could say in simple terms, grit is what separates the most successful people in the world from everybody else. Grit is passion and perseverance towards long-term goals. Grit is different than drive. I find a lot of young people are driven more than kind of maybe society wants to give credit to, but drive is different than grit, right? Because drive means, hey, I'll work 80 hours a week, I'll work 100 hours a week working on the fun stuff, programming, building a product, planning, launching something. But then as soon as it gets hard, which as soon as you have clients, as soon as you start dealing with people, that's when it gets hard. Then they quit and they go do something else, right? Because it's not fun anymore, right? Grit is sticking through it, getting passion around the progress of becoming great at your craft. So that's four. Number five is a growth mindset. If you've never read the book called Mindset by Carol Dweck, highly recommend it. Growth mindset is the belief that if I'm willing to put in the work to learn and to grow, I can do anything, right? It's the opposite of the fixed mindset, which is that we've all said it ourselves, and we've all heard lots of people say, just who I am. I'm just not good at that. Just who I am, right? I'm just not good at math. I'm just not good at this. And the understanding that you can become great at anything, right? And for those of you who have children, I'll just give a quick example here. So you could have two really driven kids, two really kids who want to be successful, want to get straight A's, want to do great. And they're both in the same, let's say, science class. And they're both have a big exam coming up. They both study really, really hard. And let's say they both get a C. The child with the growth mindset is going to say, what did I get wrong? And so that next time I can do better, so that next time I can improve and grow and do better. The child with the fixed mindset is going to say, oh, it's not fair that the teacher didn't put on the test what they told us they were going to put on it. I'm just not good at science. They didn't give me enough time. They're going to have a million excuses, and because they believe that there's nothing they can do about it, right? The victim mentality you fall into when you have a fixed mindset. And if you can instill that at a younger age you can do that, the better. The belief that if I'm willing to put in the work to learn and to do, I can do anything I want to do. And then 6, and this is sort of I'll call the secret sauce across these 6 keys or these 6 commitments is presence. And presence is simply when your mind is in the exact same place as your feet, right? Where you're able to be in the moment of where you are physically. And I'll just give an example. When I give a talk on things like, habits of the household as an example, to young business owners as an example, or to leaders in my organization, then I'll get, young, driven, men and women who say, all right, but I'm going to pick on men for a second and say, dads who say, all right, I'm going to get home for dinner moving forward, right? I'm going to start being home for dinner 3 nights a week or 5 nights a week or whatever the goal is, right? And then they show up and they get home. And so the worst thing you can do is show up and get home. But while you're at home, you're taking phone calls and you're literally completely not there, right? You're not taking phone calls. That's the obvious, right? Maybe you don't do that, but maybe you're sneaking over and text messaging and emailing and just fully distracted doing other things while you're there. That's when you're not present, or maybe you're not even doing that. Maybe you put your phone away, but mentally your mind's thinking about the problem you're trying to solve that you're going to work on as soon as you stop spending time with your kids or whatever the case is, and you're not fully paying any attention. And that can be worse than not being home at all. When you're not present there, you might be sitting in the room, but you're not actually there with your family, right? So that I found the most successful people in the world that I know make me feel like I'm the only person that matters when I'm in a conversation with them, because they're fully present, engaged. When you're fully present, engaged, that means you can get clear on what your goal of that meeting is, or the purpose of that meeting. You're going to get a lot more value out of it. That likely will mean you'll be able to make a decision faster. You don't have to spend as much time continuing to come back to this issue or this problem, and you end up getting better results because you're fully present.
My new book, Get Wealthy for Sure, the #1 financial strategy for business owners to multiply wealth predictably, just hit #1 on Amazon. So Get Wealthy for Sure is an Amazon #1 bestseller. In this book, you'll learn the wealth building secrets that the ultra rich have used for over 170 years. You'll learn how to create your own banking system using a dividend-paying whole life insurance policy, allowing you to finance your business growth, invest in lucrative opportunities, and build generational wealth, all tax-free and protected from market volatility. You'll also learn the proven strategies used by icons like Walt Disney, the Rockefellers, and top CEOs to grow their empires and get wealthy for sure. You'll learn how to build a team of expert financial professionals, implement tax-efficient strategies, and protect your assets from creditors. You'll also learn the power of thinking like the wealthy and aligning your capital for maximum impact so you can take control of your financial destiny. I also share a step-by-step aligned capital strategy that will guide you to a life of certainty, clarity, and predictability without falling victim to misinformation or settling for the status quo. If you want to get a free copy of my book, Get Wealthy for Sure, and only pay the shipping and handling, you could go to getwealthyforsure.com. That's getwealthyforsure.com.
In the world today, I mean, collectively, we have the attention span of a gnat, right? So
Yeah.
that is very, very, very key in all aspects of life. And that's the other thing. There's so many things going on. And I always talk about, even when you talk about just a wealth strategy, you look at alignment of things, right? We have a lot of people that say, oh, I want to, let's say, for example, achieve financial freedom through the vehicle of real estate.
Yeah.
but then all of their assets is allocated in a way that it's in, like in a 401k, in stocks, bonds, and mutual funds and exchange traded funds. Again, vehicle for, you can have different outcomes from that, but it's like you're trying. How is that going to help you achieve financial freedom through real estate? Right, you're completely out of alignment, and that happens in all areas of our lives too. Where if things are out of sync and out of alignment, you're just not going to move towards the targets that you want to go to. So how do you maintain that alignment within your own house and within your family?
Yeah, so we developed, two tools which we'll gladly make sure you have, and you can share them out if you so choose, or if anybody wants them, we can send them out to him, and I can give direction to do that. But one's called the personal compass, and one's called the family compass. So the personal compass is about me, right? It's about getting clear on what I'm called to do, getting clear on what my perfect life outcomes are, getting clear on what my 100-year goals are, my 20-year goals, my 5-year goals, my goals this year. Making sure that how I'm spending my time each day, to your point, is aligned with what my goals are this year, which are aligned with my goals for 10 years from now, which are aligned with my 30-year outcome, which is aligned with what I've been called to do, right? And it's a very iterative process when you go through that when you put in the work to get clear on big picture and then work down to small picture, it becomes iterative, and it helps you make sure that everything you're doing is aligned. And I see when people ask me questions all the time, I this doesn't sound as humble as I like it to sound maybe when I say this, but people ask, the number one question people ask me all the time is, how do you fit it all in? Do you ever sleep, is kind of the way people say it to me a lot of times. And I get that, daily. And for me, what's really valuable is I don't spend hardly any time. When I say any time, I mean not an hour a week where I'm not spending my time aligned with very specific outcomes, very specific goals I have. I'm not wasting any time that's unproductive. It doesn't mean that I don't take, I take from Saturday evening to Sunday evening and Sabbath and with my family. And that means, no work. That means no housework. That means we're having fun together as a family. We're spending time together. We're doing things together, right? Where you could argue I'm not doing anything that's productive by, American standards, but it's productive because I have very specific goals with my family and goals for the outcomes I want for my children and the relationships we build together and things like that, right? So making sure that we spend all of our time aligned with what we're called to do and our goals is really important. So we have a tool called Personal Compass for us to develop that individually. And then we have a tool called the Family Compass to develop that as a family. And in that Family Compass, we have each of our goals, each of our dreams, my wife's dreams, each of my kids' dreams. We have each of our love languages spelled out, which if you haven't done that, I highly encourage it. It's free. You can do love language for kids, get clear on each person's love language. We have each person's behavioral profile. We have each person's strengths through Strength Finders. We know who each other are, what each of our goals are, big picture, what each of our goals are for the year, what each of our goals are 90 days. And then from the big picture standpoint, we've set a set of values for our family, right? Set a set of family core values. We have a family mission, a family vision that align our goals, our time, our focus, our activities. And it's all in a lot on it, but a one-page document that helps us get really clear. My wife and I get really clear on how we want to raise our kids, what are important, what are the lessons we want to instill, and that drives our parenting strategy and our activities and the decisions we make. And it becomes very iterative, right? Going through this process over many years led us about 5 years ago now to decide to virtually school our kids. And that set down a whole chain of changes to our lives and where we spend our time and how we travel and how we educate our kids and so forth. That's been very intentional. Right. And we review that decision every year and say, hey, is this the right decision for the next season of life? And so, we made a goal a few years ago. We're going to adopt a child, and we set a specific goal around that. And that decision that was, not just something we did on a whim, has changed the history of our family, right? Our lives, our marriage, right? So many things.
It comes back to, you mentioned intentionality, right? You mentioned that as just keys to build an extraordinary, just family and legacy and life together. And it's that intentionality that's allowing you to build this because, like you said, you had goals of traveling and spending some time in different places around the world. And virtually schooling your kids plays into that, right? So
Absolutely.
you're very intentional of what you do. Can you just share a little bit about that too? So you're immersing in different cultures, having different experiences. It's
Yeah.
talk about an incredible education for your children.
Yeah, it's been very cool. And so our family big, hairy, audacious goal, which is one of the favorite things about my life, is this goal we have as a family, and it adds so much enrichment to our lives. It's to have 1,000 extraordinary days in 100 different places before my oldest goes to college. So we have 6 summers left. He's 12 and in seventh grade, and so that was a goal we set 2.5 years ago now, 3 years ago. And the virtually school program is a big part of that. So we live in St. Augustine, which is where I'm talking to you from right now, about 6 months of the year. And, our kids are heavily involved in sports. We've got, flag football, basketball, jiu-jitsu. We got violin. We've got, usually we've done at least one other sport, tons of sports. And that's what kind of we build our 6 months here around sports schedules. We live in Asheville, North Carolina, about 3 months out of the year. And then we live around the world the other 3 months of the year. One of our goals, a part of that, is to go to every national park in the U.S. And so we go to 5, 6, 7, 8 national parks a year. We go to a few new countries every year. We do lots of mission trips. We do 2, 3, 4 mission trips a year in different countries. And that virtual schooling is an important part. We wouldn't be able to do to the level we're doing without it. So it's not right for everybody, but it's worked for us. And fortunately for me, my wife was an elementary school teacher and as an educator by training and passion. So it's been incredible joy, but that's just helped frame up, the habits of our household and the routines and rituals of our household, and which is a phenomenal book. If anyone hasn't read it, if you have young kids, Habits of the Household by Justin Early, highly recommend it. But for us, the decision to do this has been powerful. And on one more note on the extraordinary days. So how this works is an extraordinary day could just be a day of hanging out at the pool and going on a bike ride and eating ice cream, right? Or it could be a day, doing, speedboats and jumping off a mountain in Queenstown, New Zealand, right? But it's a day together as a family. And the cool thing is when you set an intentional goal, like this year is to have 84 extraordinary days, then I plan out, different places, different things we're going to do, which really means I plan out, I'm not working, right? And we're spending time with my family. And then we start off that day, right, on a Friday or Saturday or Sunday is typically when they are, right? But you can do the math, roughly 2 a week we have. And we're saying, hey, we're going to make this an extraordinary day. And everybody's like, yeah, all right, awesome. And then at the end of the day, we're saying, all right, who voted this was an extraordinary day? And for it to be extraordinary day, everybody in the family had to vote it was extraordinary, right? And then at the end of the week, when we're doing kind of a weekly family recap, we're saying, all right, let's talk about the extraordinary days we had this week. And then once a month, when we do our family monthly meeting, we're saying, all right, let's look back at our extraordinary days for the month. Which one was your favorite? All right, why was it your favorite? Oh, because mom did something really silly, right? It was, it wasn't some big expensive thing. It was just a experience we had together, right? Then we do that. We do an annual celebration, review all of our days for the year, and we pull up, the Google Photos and look back at the pictures on those days and the things we did, right? And recap. And the joy that comes from re-celebrating those days, going back and talking about the memories of time we've got, the richness that comes from that is just powerful, and just those simple rhythms, and then writing them down, right? If I didn't write them down on a simple document, just a Excel sheet, essentially, you forget they even happened, right? We all move so fast, you forget you even had these days, right? And so yeah, it's been an incredible rhythm for us.
Yeah, it's so important just to kind of because otherwise things happen so quickly, right? I'm thinking about my own family too, where we just spent almost a month down in South Africa, and you do so many
Awesome.
things, and before you know it, it's like, oh, what did we do again? So
Yeah.
you gotta keep it alive, and all those fun memories. You mentioned habits and family habits in there. One of my favorite books by James Clear, Atomic Habits, and you mentioned
Yeah.
another one on family habits. Can you talk about the personal and family habits
Yeah.
and how that contributes to this family legacy?
Yeah, so we have just a few, so in Habits of the Household by Justin Early, which again, phenomenal book, he calls it keystone habits, as kind of having these big kind of habits that then create lots of smaller habits that kind of happen around these framework of a keystone habit, right? So as an example, one of our daily keystone habits, we have a couple. We have one is supper, right? So dinner together. And then that leads to us doing questions over dinner, right? And we recap and we talk about, what did you learn today? How did you fail today? I have like 8 different questions that I'll pick 2 or 3 on, depending on how big of a conversation it turns out to be, that leads to conversation over the dinner table. And there is just amazing power of time around a meal together as a family, right? We've got a habit of prayer and blessings and a Bible story with my kids before they go to bed. I have a one-on-one prayer with my wife most nights. I'd like to say every night, but we fail to do it some nights. But there's a big study that was done by Gallup, and if people listening to this only take one thing from this talk, and I encourage you to take this fact, that about 50% of marriages end in divorce. And so this huge study was done by Gallup to say, all right, well, what leads to a successful marriage and a failed marriage? Right? What are the differences that happen? What could you do that would dramatically increase your probability of your marriage succeeding? And so all the things, if any of us were going to do this study, the things we would think about, we would hypothesize would make a difference, barely made a difference. You would think, all right, if there's financial stability in the household, that would make a big difference. Barely any difference. If there's great intimacy in the marriage, you would think that would make a big difference. Barely makes a difference. Right? You'd think, all right, you go to church together. That's going to do it for sure, right? Barely makes a difference. The thing that leads to almost 100% of marriages staying together, not getting divorced, is prayer life together. Husband and wife having a prayer life together. Very different than going through the routine of church. Church is great. So that's our daily rhythms. On a weekly basis, it's the Sabbath. So we start at Saturday evening at dinner time. We conclude Sunday at dinner time. We're not perfect at it. There's things that come up. And it doesn't mean like we just sit around the house and do nothing. It means we're doing things together. Nobody's out on iPads by themselves. We're not doing work. We're not doing housework. We're spending time enjoying each other. This time of year, right? There's a lot of football involved, right? As an example, but we're spending that time together intentionally without the distraction of screens. On a monthly basis, we do a family meeting, which is, I could send a framework of how we do it, but we do a family conversation every month with a simple framework we built every month. Every quarter, we call family board meetings, which comes from a good friend of mine, Jim Shields, wrote a book called 18 Summers, and it's this quarterly 101. I know it's not like you've read it.
Yeah, I've had him on the show. He's great.
Isn't it awesome? Yeah, it's awesome. Half a day together, just husband or just dad or mom and child doing whatever the child wants, but again, no electronics. And then one of other Jim Shields' great tools is date night with a question, which we try to do at least twice a month, which is going on a date night's great, but it ends up just being kind of the time to talk about kids and having a deck of cards, questions that you're going to ask to better learn and get to know each other, drive your conversation is really powerful as well. So those are our simple kind of rhythms we do, that those rhythms create a lot of other structure to make those happen.
Yeah, communication plays a big role in the family, right?
The center of it, yeah.
Family meetings, right? And I think that's a big thing for folks. If you're listening to this too, I think that's a big thing for people. It's almost like the reason why relationships aren't growing is because you don't have those communications and open communications, right?
Amen. Yeah, agreed.
And now, when you think about this, just from a family legacy standpoint and this family office kind of structure, if I've listeners and viewers listening to this and saying, "This is great. How do I incorporate this?" Where can they start? Is there a framework that you can share with them and say, "Hey, here are the pieces that you can put into place"? And again, it doesn't happen all at once, right? It happens over a period of time.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would say, a few things. So one is things that we can provide to you that could be helpful to get started. One is the personal compass and family compass that I talked about. I'll gladly send those templates out. I'll make sure you have them. The family meeting framework. I've had big, large wealth management firms and large organizations that serve wealthy families that have had me come and talk on how to do family meetings. Not because I have any incredible wisdom, but just because I built a simple framework that works to have to make those conversations happen, and it's nothing complicated, right? But I'll send that framework. So a lot of the cases, we just need a tool to get started, right? We just need some sort of framework, just enough to get going. So those would be a few tools I can send out right away. Habits of the Household, I'd highly recommend reading that book. coming up here in June, which I know is months away, but we do an annual event called Building an Extraordinary Family Event. And we bring in all these kind of experts, people I sort of was talking about in some of the different books and such, people like Jim and people like Justin Early and such. And we have a 3-day event with kids of all ages where we focus on family. We bring in education for elementary school kids, middle school kids, teenage kids, adult kids. People bring grandparents, etc. It'll be a great time of learning together. There's lots of great experts out there. There's lots of great books out there. I would just say that the first step is just putting in, just committing to putting in, 10% of the time we spend on our businesses or we spend on our financial resources. I read a lot of books, and last year I think it was 91 books I finished, right? And so other people listen to lots of podcasts or different ways you consume content, right? Well, are you going and listening to podcasts or reading books on parenting, on building an extraordinary family, on building legacy, or are you reading another great book from one of my good friends like John C. Maxwell or Jim Collins, right? And they're great too, right? But committing to intentionally to spend some time focusing on how do I build legacy, how do I build an incredible family. I'd recommend 2 great books on that topic, depending on where you're at in your journey. Halftime, the famous classic book on getting clear on how do we have significance in our lives. And the follow-up book to that's written by one of my close friends, Lloyd Reeb, called Success to Significance. Some great books to really think about legacy. And then my favorite book of all time is by Mark Batterson, called Chase the Lion. If you want to get really clear on kind of legacy you want of setting really big, what he calls God-sized goals you can only accomplish with divine intervention. I read it every week of Thanksgiving. Powerful. So reading a few of those books, using a few of the tools that I'll send out would be a great place to get started. If you don't currently have family values, no matter what the age of your kids are, no matter where you're at in the journey, starting there is a really great place to start. I could put a couple resources out in terms of people who do family. We do them at our events, but other people who come and do family value workshops that are really, really powerful. Guys like Bill High is an example of that, who does these kind of workshops that I've gone through with my wife and been really powerful for us to get really clear on our values and our vision, our mission for our family.
Don, most people are familiar with you and your company, DLP Capital. But can you share all the different things that you're involved with too? Because you're involved with a lot of stuff, and I know it's been a while since we caught up, and maybe you could give us an update because I think you were working on acquiring a bank at one stage too when we were talking. So what's going on in your world?
Yeah, thank you. So as I mentioned a little bit earlier, my calling is to transform lives through the building of thriving communities, and so everything I do is centered around that, and could spend a lot of time on explaining that more. But in short, where that starts with, where that begins for us of building thriving communities, is housing that people can afford. That's a simple way to say it, and that's what our world revolves around. So our core business is DLP Capital, like on my shirt if you're watching, and so it's a company I founded 18 years ago last week. 18 years ago, and since then, we've grown the organization by about 50% a year every year for 18 years. One of the fastest growing companies in America for 12 years in a row. And we have the great joy today of serving 3,400 families who invest capital into our private funds. Those funds own real estate, housing, and they lend money to other developers, builders, and operators who develop and build and operate affordable housing. And affordable meaning housing that working families can afford. That's what we do. So we own 25,000 rental homes, and then we have a lending business of a couple $1 billion lending money to other people doing the same, all part of DLP Capital. And we develop and we build and we operate. So about over 500 team members across the organization, headquartered here in St. Augustine, Florida. So that's our core business. Alongside that, we do a lot of education, a lot in helping people, certainly, having the great joy to do things like this and talk about really fun topics of family and legacy, and helping people get clear on really what the purpose of their wealth is and their lives at a broader sense is a great joy, and get to do a lot of things around that. We host these big events. We've got one in just a couple weeks. Might be too late by the time people hear about this probably, but called our Extraordinary Legacy event. And we have John C. Maxwell, Mark Batterson, Tim Tebow, lots of incredible speakers. And this is all ministry for us. We don't charge for it. It's not a revenue generator. It's just our way to pour into those that we invest in and who invest with us. And so we do a lot of work around that. We do a lot of philanthropy. We have a corporate foundation called the Positive Returns Foundation, focused on building thriving communities in ways that we haven't figured out how to do in a for-profit way. So we get to work alongside our for-profit businesses and serve the most vulnerable and most in need in this country and around the world. And then alongside DLP Capital, we have DLP Bank, which is our banking platform, which we're doing some really exciting things right now there, including buying another bank as we speak, a much larger bank. And we think of banking as a really big, important part of this economy, a really important part of this country. I could argue here, if anybody wanted to have the argument with me, that it's the greatest, it's arguably the best business in the world to impact communities. And when done well, community banking is a fundamental, critical aspect of our society, of communities. And so some pretty big goals there, and growing our banking platform, which has been a big focus for us over the last few years. And then along all that, along the education front, I consider us humbly experts in scaling and building great organizations that make an impact, while at the same time not losing our souls, right? What's it to win the world and lose your soul, right? So we help a lot of great business leaders, especially those around real estate, build incredible businesses while also building extraordinary families, and understand that there's an and, not an or, in that equation. It doesn't have to be you build a great business or you have a great family. It's an and when done well, and when done with discipline and intentionality. So we built a system we call the Elite Execution System, which is a kind of a system of how do you set clear goals, how do you achieve those goals, how do you drive clear communication and solve problems in our organizations when you're growing fast. All the same challenges kind of we've talked about with families, right? We have in our organizations. And so we built a framework, tools, technology, wrote a couple books on it, building an elite organization, building an elite career, that help companies scale and grow great businesses while also building incredible families at the same time.
If you've been watching the news headlines, you know that the world's top CEOs, biggest investors, family offices, ultra affluent, and political elite are all moving to cash. Why? They're building up their war chest to go buy assets at a significant discount in the coming months. They are warehousing their capital in vehicles that have stood the test of time for 170 years, with institutions that have made good on their promises for 170 years. If you're interested to learn how to build your own banking system using the infinite banking concept, just like all of these parties, you can watch a presentation at yourownbankingsystem.com. That's yourownbankingsystem.com.
So you definitely live very, very intentionally, and there's it's exciting to hear about all the different things that you've got going on. The banking platform, is that online? Does it have a branch in a particular area? How does that work?
Yeah, so our bank today is called DLP Bank. We're headquartered in Central Florida. We have a few branches around Florida, but we serve clients all over the country. We lend all over the country. So we're doing some pretty big things there, though, right now. We're actually buying another bank that has branches in Florida, Georgia, Connecticut, New York. And then we're actually in process as well, probably too much to get into today, but of merging with a larger bank in a few Midwest states and Southeast states, or Southwest states, Texas, at the same time. So our vision here is within the next couple of years, we'll have a bank close to the size of DLP Capital of a number of billions of dollars, and a footprint around this country, and really size and scale to make a difference in the lives of many families, many of the residents who live in housing communities that we're a part of around the country, serve business owners, serve high net worth individuals who need private banking who need great service, who need support because they're running busy lives and businesses and careers. And then that really focuses on building communities and investing in building housing, which the fundamental problem we have in this country of not having enough housing starts with, and the biggest reason we don't have enough housing, the biggest reason we have affordability crisis in this country is because we don't have enough housing. And the big reason we don't have enough housing is because there's not enough financing to build housing, which was always the job of the community bank. But a lot of banks, due to regulations and a couple other reasons, have been pushed on the sidelines. And there's not enough banking, financing developers and builders to provide more housing. And that's we know one of the biggest leverage points we can do is provide the capital to build more housing, to impact this affordability crisis we have in this country.
Yeah, it's interesting. One of the reasons I was asking is because there's such an opportunity, right, in the banking sector too, just as you mentioned, because there's been a shakeup there for a while, with the community banks and then also even some regional banks. And so there's a massive opportunity there. So it's exciting to see you guys capitalizing on opportunities there.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun, and we're excited about it. Depending on when people listen to this, we are for this new bank acquisition, we are in process right now of bringing in shareholders to invest alongside myself. I'm the largest investor by quite a few multiples in our banking platform, but we have a number of our investors who invest alongside us and owning and growing a really powerful, faith-forward bank platform that's going to get to serve a lot of community, build a lot of housing, impact this country. Is pretty exciting.
Very, very exciting stuff. Don, what is the easiest way for people to follow you in DLP Capital and stay informed of all of the many things that you're involved with and that you guys offer?
Yeah, so you can find me certainly on all the typical places you'd expect. I have a podcast called Impact with Don Wenner, but our company, DLP Capital, dlpcapital.com. When you go there, you can subscribe. You'll get up to date on all the events and activities and things we're doing, all the tools and resources we have, all the things we have coming up and around. And then on our website, there's a place you can click on Elite. The tab is Elite. And you can download a lot of free tools and resources on building extraordinary family, legacy, business, etc., which we can gladly send to anybody directly as well. But yeah, you can find us at DLP Capital on any social media platforms, and we'd love the opportunity to serve you. And on our website, dlpcapital.com, you can click /20 or click on the 20, and you can see all our content, all our resources, everything that we have going on right there as well.
Fantastic. Well, this has been great to connect again, and appreciate you coming on and sharing your insights and your knowledge. And thank you so much for providing so much value for all of my listeners and my viewers.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Last thing I'll leave you with, just a reminder, 99% of couples that pray together stay together. So take one thing from that, take that.
And thank you to all of my listeners and my viewers for, again, spending your most valuable resource, your time, once again with me on the show today. Everything Cashflow Ninja is at cashflowninja.com. We have over 1,000 podcasts, 4 books, reports, webinars, and much, much more, all at cashflowninja.com. And don't forget to subscribe to the #1 newsletter in the alternative wealth strategy and alternative asset investing space, the Wealth Dojo. You can subscribe to the Wealth Dojo by going to cashflowninja.com/subscribe. Until next time, live infinitely.
This presentation is for educational and informational purposes only. The information being presented and considered does not consider your particular financial objectives or situation, and it does not make personalized recommendations. This material is not intended to replace the advice of a qualified tax and legal advisor or other qualified professionals, and you should not use the information in place of a customized consultation with a licensed professional regarding your specific personal financial objectives, situation, and needs. We believe the information provided is reliable, but we do not guarantee its accuracy, timeliness, or completeness.